Good evening, friends, and welcome to our fourth episode of Moonshot Conversations. Our episode today is a discussion on raising resilient children and how we may also adapt resilience as a brain and mind muscle. The common thread I'm beginning to pick up and stitch together through all our conversations is our thoughts, which can be our own thoughts or ones that we hear, create our internal language. Our internal language forms our beliefs, and these beliefs can be ones that can move us forward, or those beliefs can hold us back. The idea that holds the greatest excitement for me as I become more and more aware of what is happening around me is to get to choose our beliefs, and so we can change our mind. We can change our mind on the basis of the beliefs that we believe in. Friends, remember, we have 3 journals uploaded from our first 3 sessions, and now today after the show, you'll get the fourth journal, which is on resilience. Do go to moonshotconversations.com and download those journals. Lena, tell us more about the topic of today's conversation, resilience. Why is it important as a brain muscle? Why do we need to develop this to live our best possible life?
Okay, so hello everyone. Let me start by explaining what resilience is. It's a neurocognitive characteristic that gives
Yes,
us the ability to bounce back from stress. This includes day-to-day stress as well as in periods of intense stress, adversity, failure, challenges, and even in some cases trauma. It is something we need to, when we are falling emotionally, financially, physically, and when we actually fall from these things, we have to have the ability to get up, dust ourselves off, and get back in the saddle again. So it's not just only that. Developing resilience is also very, very important, just not just to bounce back from failure, but it's also important to develop to lead a successful life. Resilient children and adults are more likely to take healthy risks. They are more likely to be brave, to be curious, and to be trusting of their instincts. This is why we're more likely to find successful entrepreneurs who have a resilient mindset, or people in positions requiring an entrepreneurial mindset. And Agnello, Rajesh, you run businesses, and let's face it, today we all
yes,
know that even if your child doesn't become an independent entrepreneur, what you are looking for, and what anybody in places of leading companies, what they're looking for is an entrepreneurial mindset. So
absolutely.
so the future belongs to the entrepreneur, and even if your child does not become an independent entrepreneur, you want to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. And don't forget, all the companies, all the forward-looking companies are already looking
Looking.
for this, and they're looking more for mindsets and habits of success that you've built as habits rather than your resume. So
Absolutely.
companies like Google, Amazon, they all are looking for resilience in your children when they're hiring you. So when they're hiring your kids. So not only are the resilient people the ones who pick themselves up when they fall, but they're also likely to be less depressed.
Absolutely. And the feeling of mind plays a very important role in the output that we can generate. Lena, when we discuss the importance of developing an optimistic mindset, we discuss the fact that depression is on the rise, along with
Yes.
alarming statistics. You just mentioned that resilient people are less likely to be depressed. What is the connection between resilience and depression?
So, what interests me is all around the world, there's an increase in awareness about meditation and healing. In fact, even Harvard University is talking about meditation and healing.
Yes,
Conventional doctors are looking at EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, as part of their therapy for healing. And, we know so much more about the mind and body connection, and depression is still continually on the rise. Why?
absolutely.
There's a real reason, because today's children can tolerate less discomfort than when they were once children were able to, and they have
Absolutely.
more negative reactions today to the world around them. Teen suicides keep increasing in you've seen the statistics, as you mentioned,
Yes,
Operation Optimism. There are many factors, but the main one is the entire or foundation of our culture discourages resilience. We are given clear messages by the media that the world is a scary place, and that we need things, people, strategies to protect us from the terror that surrounds us. In this
yes,
way, we are constantly being brainwashed to develop a victim mentality. Apart from this, we're learning that everything that makes us uncomfortable is bad. We're always looking for happiness. That
absolutely.
and that there's always an instant fix to finding happiness. And also we have to understand that anything that can distract us from the feeling of discomfort, we will. And we're looking to fix our lives, and we're looking for instant happiness, we're looking for instant happiness instantly, and that's one of the reasons why.
Fabulous. Lina, we all know life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient. I remember in one of our previous discussions, Lina, you mentioned that we have to have a huge surge in media offerings, which we are witnessing every day. News has progressed from half an hour a week to half a day, and today 24 hours throughout the day. And on one or more channels, we hear a lot of negative news. There are not only more channels, but there are 375 news channels in the world, out of which 82 channels are only in India. And this, of course, the media is vying for eyeball attention. They are gauging what people like to understand, and they feel that negativity draws more attention than positive news. And that's what they do, that's what they keep doing all the time. And that fear drives our attention. With all the media constantly preying on our fears, what can we do as parents to help our children become more resilient?
Well, the first thing we have to do, Agnella Rajesh, is we have to teach our children not to avoid painful feelings. And instead, we have to teach them to feel them and move through them. So we have to, as parents, keep in mind that we cannot be grateful for water unless we've actually experienced thirst. Or as the Dalai Lama says, pain is what you measure pleasure by. So the first thing is we have to accept and embrace the fact that there is inevitable pain just by virtue of us being human.
Absolutely.
We will all suffer in one way or another at some point of time, right?
Yes.
And so the first thing we have to understand, that our children will also suffer. There is no life lived without understanding pain. We will all feel at some point of time the loss of people. We'll feel the rejection. We'll feel fear. We'll face uncertainty like we're doing now. So these are all uncomfortable feelings, but feelings that will happen to every single human being alive. So we need to teach our children, don't resist these feelings, and lean into the discomfort and feelings rather than avoiding and resisting them. So I'll give you an example from my own life. My son once freaked out when he heard of a plane crash, and he thought I was on the plane. And when he finally got through to me, he was racking in sobs, and he couldn't even speak. He then started screaming that if you die, I will die. I cannot live without you. And I used this time as a time to teach him resilience. I taught him how to calm himself down. And, if I had every moment as a parent is an opportunity to be a teaching moment, right? So if I just let him be, and, I could have even felt like really happy that I'm so important in his life, that we want to be important in our kids' lives. But then if I'd done that, I would have failed him as a parent, because our job, like any animal on this planet, is to help our children to come closer to surviving and thriving in our absence. So every day we live, we have to say our child is one day closer to being independent of our care. So the fact that I will die one day and Drish will have to learn to cope, I know that, right? That's a fact. So why not use this experience he was having to help him lean into those feelings and overcome them while I'm alive? While I can help him cope, while I'm there to actually pick him up. So this is one of the ways we can give them the internal resources that they will need to help them cope with life when it gets difficult. And when we're not around to support them. If kids can learn that uncomfortable feelings will exist, and if they go through the process of managing these feelings, then they also will realize that these uncomfortable feelings pass. And the more they do this, the more they learn. And then when they face a really tough situation, they're more likely to grow and learn from this experience rather than break down and crumble. I've watched my mom die 3 times and come back 3 times.
Wow.
I'm actually prepared for her death. So as long as I can make her live happily while she's alive, I'm actually completely prepared for her death, because you go through a little bit of pain, and that's what builds resilience. Also because the media has convinced us that the world is not safe. We don't let our kids do things that were once normal. walk to school, use public transport, all normal things kids once used to do. Dealing with physical discomfort like the heat or the cold, fatigue, thirst, all these things help us build our resilience.
Fabulous, Lina. That example of you seeing your mother dying thrice, and then you building up your mind to accept the reality and the situation and to cope up with the situation is so critically important. Okay, so media is playing its role in constantly screaming for our attention, Lina. What are some of the other ways in which our culture may be influencing us into not building resilience? What is your sharing on that?
So let's explore some of the key things that are different for kids today, right?
Okay.
Firstly, they've got access to digital devices.
Yes.
And social media, and both of these offer instant escape and distraction from any feeling that they're going through, any uncomfortable feeling like loneliness, boredom, or sadness, or even an increasingly overwhelming academic load and pressure, right? So the minute I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can go play a game, go to social media, and I can distract myself. So this replaces us having to actually confront those uncomfortable feelings that we just bound to have. Parents who watch the news have become more scared than any previous generation. Don't talk to strangers. I'm monitoring where you are all the time. These messages are additionally influencing our children that the world is not a safe place. When in fact, Agnello Rajesh, you and I know the world has never been as safe as it is today.
Yes, absolutely, right? I agree to that. Yeah.
But think about it. A child gets murdered in a bathroom at a school in Noida, and every news channel is covering it. And once upon a time, we would never have heard of it on the news in a half-hour slot where there's only so much that you could cover. But now it's just news, news, news. I must have received at least 30 messages about Amitabh Bachchan contracting coronavirus today. I mean,
yes.
And every time we hear that, every time we hear something that's uncomfortable, it keeps telling our brain that the world is unsafe. Protect your children. And then we protect our children extra. And in this process, our kids are actually losing out on building the real things they need to cope in the world.
Fabulous, Lina. The Amitabh Bachchan news is really actually scaring the whole country, but I'm sure it is also helping us to take precautions in this current scenario of the pandemic. Lina, you spoke about digital devices, and I can see how being attached to a screen gives us the ability to be distracted and escape what means that our children are losing the opportunity to building coping skills, or in fact, it allows them to escape uncomfortable feelings and get distracted, and not allow them to feel and move past the actual feelings which should actually have been their coping mechanism. So what would you advise in such a situation?
So there's that situation firstly, and then there's almost too much of a focus on happiness and less on an understanding that it's normal to feel disappointed that you did not get selected for the soccer team, or sad that you were not invited for a birthday party, or angry that your younger brother broke your PlayStation. Many parents feel today that it's their job to fix it and to make their children happy. If your child is sad, let's quickly cheer him up. If your child is angry, let's quickly calm him down. So then your kids grow up believing it's their right to always be happy. And when that is not the case, it's, they feel an uncomfortable feeling, then it's their right that somebody will come along and fix it up. And, too many parents are actually trying to fix things for their kids.
So I'm sure it is not right to do. So I guess if we are constantly managing our children's emotions for them, we are actually not allowing them to manage these emotions themselves. We are actually overprotecting our children in some way or the other. How can we shift this role as a parent?
Very simple. Every time you want to do something, and this is the same thing I tell my teachers, ask yourself, is this in the best interest of my child in the long term? Not in the short term, in the long term. So in the short term, every emotional or physical scar we protect our children from in the short term, we will harm them in the long term. Every unmindful way we try to boost our child's self-esteem, like saying, you are the smartest, you are the fastest, you are the most creative, may give them a short-term boost, a dopamine hit. And dopamine is when we, the feel-good chemical in our brain. Yeah. But then it puts pressure on these kids to live up to the praise, and then they start fearing rejection. So then we top this up with tuitions and classes, and we micromanage our kids' lives, homework, schedules. So we're preparing them academically, but not emotionally to succeed. And we need to actually spend more time teaching them to succeed emotionally. And I'm saying this as an educator, that EQ trumps IQ. Knowing how to manage their emotions, their homework, and their schedules themselves is
Mhm.
vital for our kids. Parents need to take off the protection hat and start wearing the hat of a coach. And
Wow, that
a, a coach never gives you the answers.
absolutely. They make you get to the answers.
Yes.
Fabulous. Lina, I remember at a time in my childhood where I accompanied my mother to a jewelry shop in Goregaon and I saw my mother selling her gold. Two bangles and one Mangal Sutra, as she had to pay the outstanding dues of housing board house where we were living. And the rent collector was to come the next day with the police to recover money from defaulters in the area. We were also one of the cases we had not paid the outstanding dues for a couple of years. I was in my sixth standard. My mother saw the pain in my eyes when she was selling the gold, but she said one very important statement. She said, Rajesh, remember in life, either a situation controls you or you control the situation. This is temporary. This too shall pass. She said this and took me to another shop where she bought an imitation jewelry Mangal Sutra. But trust me, Lina, this statement and this episode made me change the course of my life. It changed my thoughts and the purpose of my life. I have known you for quite a while and I have watched you bounce back from almost losing your business in the year 2006. I have heard you often say that this was the most challenging year you ever experienced. Rock bottom became the solid foundation in which I rebuilt my life. This is a very famous statement by J.K. Rowling, an author just like you. Probably I like the way you write and I resonate that with what J.K. Rowling has also written. Fast forward 10 years and you have rebuilt your business strong enough to sell it. Can you talk about the 2006 episode from the lens of how resilience helped you in 2006 onwards?
Of course. So I always say 2006 was the most challenging year. When I look back, I say, my God, how did I even survive that? But it was, I was 42 years old. So I'm saying this because I wasn't a spring chicken. When you're younger, you tend to be more resilient naturally.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I was 42 years old. I was down and out. I just left my marriage. So I felt like a failure, as any good Indian girl will feel like a failure if her marriage doesn't work out. I had a schooling business that I had built, which was unraveling. I had no money to pay my staff salaries. And I was actually thinking of selling my business, my jewelry, just like your mom did. And my credibility, something that was extremely important to me, was being questioned by the parents of my schools and the media on a daily to day basis. I was scared to get out of bed. I barely had the mental strength, the emotional strength, or the physical strength to get out of bed in the morning. But that's exactly what I did. Day after day, I got out of bed and piece by piece began reconstructing my business, my credibility, and my life. So resilience is what allowed me to show up. There's a TED talk that we put in the journal, today's
Mhm.
journal, and watch the show.
Yes.
It's watch how a woman uses her resilience after losing a child to pull her life together. There can be no more painful an experience than losing a child, and and and,
Absolutely.
and watch how she uses the ability of resilience to put her life back together.
Fantastic, Lina. Friends, you may have to fight a battle more than once to win it. It's your reaction to adversity, not adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop. Lina, I remember that time of 2006, and I know that if we fast forward to today, you rebuild the business, bought your dream home and holiday home. You're currently in Goa, that is your holiday home. I know you sold your schooling business at its peak and have begun working on this new project with me. Can you tell us some of the steps you took to being down and getting up, dusting yourself, crawling, walking, and running again? How's this journey been?
So the first thing is I felt the pain. I allowed myself to feel the pain. I
Yes.
cried. I went through the trauma, right? I always feared rejection, which is a topic I'll tell you in another situation, because of my upbringing in Australia.
Mhm.
So, when somebody rejects me, that's the deepest pain I used to feel. I've overcome it now. But so a franchisee dumped me and he's trying to destroy me. I felt the rejection. I felt the pain of loss. I felt the loss of control. That was
Mhm.
step one. Step two was to accept what I could change and start thinking of things, forget what you can't change, because you can't change that anyway, right?
Absolutely.
I can't make him realign with me and say, please be my franchisee, I need you. But what I can do is say, what can I control in this situation? And when you start thinking like that, what's the worst case scenario? And I knew the worst case scenario is that I would have a roof over my head and food on my table. That
Absolutely.
that worst case scenario calms down the fear center in your brain. Yeah? And I'll explain that process in one of our moonshots. But when you begin to accept that, in the worst case, you can lose your credibility, your business, your money, but you still have what is needed to, feed yourself, to survive.
Yes.
And you've calmed down the fear center, then, only then, can the CEO, the logic center of your brain start working. Fear comes down, logic comes up. If fear is up, logic is down. Simple as that from a brain science point of view. So the other part of my brain then started taking over, and then I started also looking at the people I could rely on. Relationships is a big part of being resilient. I mean,
Absolutely.
you were my friend at that time. Bala
Yes.
Giri was my friend at that time.
Yes.
I had 3 people in my office, Divya, Fazla, and Meghna. They came into my office, held my hand, and said, "We are with you no matter what.
Wow.
Don't pay our salaries." And you can you imagine a sense of inner resilience that relationship gives you? Then
Yes.
my younger brother flew here, and he and my son, they were actually crying. They were feeling my fears with me, and that diluted the intensity of the fear for me, because this also builds resilience. So having strong relationships you can depend on, controlling what you control, and feeling the fear in the reverse order, all helps you build resilience.
Fabulous, fabulous. Friends, Nelson Mandela said, "Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got up again." Leena, what you said now exactly resonates with that particular statement. Leena, I have often heard you quote Anthony Robbins that through your pain can come your greatest gift. What are some of the gifts you gain from the painful 2006 experience that has been the highlight of your life's journey?
So my pain is nothing compared to the woman on the TED Talk in the journal.
Wow.
You watch her, and you understand that from her pain came her gift. So after having to find resilience, she goes on and she studies resilience, and then she offers it as a gift to the world. She writes books, she speaks at TED. I mean, so it made me. When you're down and out and you've got nothing to lose, it made me push past my comfort zone. Up till then, I always played safe to my strengths, which is instructional design and franchising of the gifts that I have. But if I wanted my credibility back, I actually had to learn to build and operate my own school. I had to, so I had to depend on my growth mindset. So I learned the art of raising money. I learned the art of negotiating land deals and building and operating a school from scratch. I wouldn't have done it if I'd stayed in my comfort zone, if 2006 never happened. So today I actually have written a thank you note to the franchisee who dumped me, saying, "Thank you, because of you, I learned how to do all this." And it's the building of our own schools that brought the multiple value on turnover. It also then taught me not to fear rejection and helped me understand that intense attachment to anything, people, partners, brands, anything, is not so great. And I relied on that when it came to time for me to sell my schooling brands. I knew how to release the brands. So the biggest lesson is not from my academic education that I got. It's my mindset, and it's and that's then what I always try to do, the correct thing for kids in my schools, that build the right mindset. But at the end of the day, they still had to sit the board exam. So I really want parents to give them the art of building an inside out approach to learning, an inside out approach to being. So I was done with academic focus. This is what I want to focus on, and that's what you and I are doing today.
So I understand your interest in what we are jointly doing. You have a keen interest in the essential thoughts, values, beliefs, and stories that people have that allow them to live happily, healthy, and meaningful and successful lives, and face challenges with a different set of mind muscles to those that do not. What is your comment on that?
So those are the questions that keep going through my head. What allows some people to bounce back from a setback, from a challenge, from an adversity? I mean, what do these people have in common? Are there tools and resources we can give parents and educators that can help them shape, develop, and optimize the neurocognitive characteristics that are essential for success? That's what you and I are doing here now. I mean, are there specific things that we can do as parents to help bring up our children to have these strong characteristics?
Fantastic. So we have covered that each one of us has a personal choice to make in the light of our experiences. I can see that you could have chosen to be a victim, but instead you use the experiences as a driver for growth. How can our environment encourage resilience?
So, some of the things are that if I go back to my childhood, because that's how I started thinking about resilience, I had lots of leg surgeries, etc., and I had a lot of pain, a lot of physical discomfort. And I believe that also physical pain can help you build emotional resilience.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So separation from my parents when I was a child, because I was in frog plaster, that helped me build resilience. Separation from my father, who I'm very, very attached to, when he had to go to Australia to help send money for us to go there. And I had to separate from him for 6 months. That helped me build resilience. Moving from country to country, different languages, cultures, adopting helps build resilience. When we were in Australia, my younger brother, who was only 6 years old at the time, and he's very resilient, and I was only 9 at the time, we would walk to school. That it was an hour to school, walk, and an hour back. And when we were in school, we were different, right? We were the Indian kids. There weren't so many Indian kids in Australia at that time, and we were economically backward, so we didn't have the trendy shoes and lunchbox, a pencil case that allowed us to fit in. So dealing with all that normal bullying and all of that, builds resilience. Watching my mom and dad go to work, early in the morning and come back late in the evening, and they had, one is to watch them and how resilient they were, and the second is they didn't have time to help us deal with our uncomfortable feelings. We learned to deal with our uncomfortable feelings ourselves. So,
Fantastic.
and one of the things I tell parents: make your kids do chores, make them contribute to the house. It
Yes.
all builds resilience. So, I had part-time jobs. My in the house, I had jobs, my brothers had jobs, but even outside, all my father would say is, I'm here to pay for your food and your college fees and whatever. For everything else, I've done jobs. I've been a flower girl, I've been a waitress, I've been an attendant in old people's home and in child care centers. All of these experiences helped me overcome 2006.
Wow. So some amount of struggle could actually be helpful. Tell us about some of your childhood experiences, Leena, that may have helped you to develop a resilient mindset.
So, I've just expressed what helped me build a resilient mindset, but what I want every parent to understand, that there's a lot of research in this area, that any early childhood challenging experience, and that's just not in people, it's in plants, it's in animals. Sometimes this acts as an advantage, and it's like, we're all looking for antibodies for the coronavirus or for any disease. We need to build the antibodies, and these little painful experiences we have as kids growing up help us build the big antibodies when the big challenge comes at us.
Leena, after what I heard from what you say, and you say this so profusely and so passionately, I always remember what Oprah Winfrey says. She famously says that turn your wounds into wisdom. And this is what I could recollect when you were sharing what you just shared. So from what you described, I summarize this as high levels of self-reliance at a very early age, independence, self-sufficiency, ambiguity, and a feeling of being capable. So from what you said earlier, I sense that these are some of the common aspects what builds resilience.
100%. And also, if you model resilience for your kids, right? I watched both my parents role model resilience. I watched my father, supported by my mother, start his life from business life from scratch in Australia. I've watched him start his life from scratch 3 times with a wife and kids to take care of. So not only watching my father, but hearing his stories, his stories of when he went to Australia, when he reached England as a student and he only had, £1 in his pocket. And, all of these things, hearing these stories provided my brain with valuable insights of what it takes to be resilient. And so we need to be telling our kids these stories, that any story that you've had as a parent that shows resilience, if you tell your kids the stories about your mother selling the gold, it's going to help them.
Yes.
It's going to give them examples, it's going to tell their brains, people can change jobs, people can learn new things from scratch. And people can face fear and uncertainty and risk and learn new things. And these are things we teach our kids.
Fabulous. So Leena, as parents, we all want to raise our children to be happy, healthy, and to find meaning and purpose, and also to be successful at the same time. One thing I've picked up that I can do as a parent for my kids is to model resilient behavior when I face a setback or a challenge. What are some of the other things we can actively do as parents to build resilience in our children?
Let your kids fall down. Let them scrape their knees. Let them learn how to deal with pain and discomfort that doesn't have serious health consequences. All of these are going to make it more likely that your child will be able to handle more serious difficulties later on. Don't
Fantastic.
don't intervene in your child's relationships. I've seen too many parents try to do that with teachers. Having relationship and other obstacles is what helps children build resilience and develop coping skills when faced with challenges. That's why we've taken too much play away from our kids, and it's during this play, when they're interacting with others and when they feel rejected, when they have to learn coping skills, these are the things that help kids build resilience. Children need to think of strategies to cope with normal childhood bullying. Don't keep helping them through it. Parents today don't want to see their kids suffer at all. And without any suffering, understand your kid will build no coping skills for when he or she does have to suffer. You need those small doses to build immunity. Don't fix your child's need to be on the basketball team, in the front row of the school dance, or by any influence or coercion. I remember when we used to have preschool races. Parents would fight to say that their kid came first. That's not the important thing. and you're not here to fight your kids' battles. Let them fight them themselves.
On their own. Yeah, absolutely. So an overprotected child grows into an adult who does not know how to fix things for him or herself. So parents, remember that if your children have not built the coping tools to face disappointment, to have struggle, and to persevere on their own, as adults, they will be overwhelmed. This sort of not coping after a relationship breakup or a loss of a job or other setback often leads to depression, which we are witnessing in large percentages today. Can you talk, Lina? Can you talk about some of the other things that we as parents should do more or less of?
So don't be overly invested in the outcome of your child's academic, sporting, or artistic development. Be interested in the process, but not in the outcome. When you're overly invested in the outcome, the child does not feel that they own that accomplishment themselves. Don't do your kids' projects for them. You can guide them, but don't do them. When you do the project, you communicate to your child that he or she is not capable of doing it independently. What builds confidence in kids is working hard at something and seeing it through to completion. This includes working things in the house. Let them make their bed. Let them learn to wash dishes. Let them cope with all the results, positive and negative. Give kids some say in negotiation consequences for their actions. So we negotiate rules and consequences, but we must follow up on implementing them, because then this will help your kids develop and internalize their own moral compass and to set limits for themselves as adults and have a sense of resilience.
Fantastic. So we should allow our children to assume more responsibility around their schoolwork and succeed on their own sake, and not for meeting our approvals as parents or anybody else in the family or in friends, right?
100%. Whatever responsibility, I tell parents, whatever responsibility you assume, your child can abdicate, right? So don't do all these things and let them succeed on their own because they want to. Children must develop the understanding and the feeling of power, that they have that power to shape their own lives.
Fantastic. What about this current time? This time is really testing resilience for parents who have lost jobs or are experiencing financial challenges. What's your advice for these current times?
I see too many parents trying to hide their financial problems from their kids. But dealing with challenges is one of the most empowering skills that your child needs to develop. So if you explain things calmly to your child and show your child how to practice cautious optimism, your child will be better prepared for challenging situations that may arise in his own life. So rather than hide this time, use this time to teach your kids that during this time they can't always get what they want. I watch kids, especially where I live in Pali Hill. Kids get what they want all the time, and then they feel overimportant, they feel entitled, they lack emotional intelligence and empathy. And these are all essential things for the development of emotional resilience.
Fantastic. So my key takeaways from today's session is to help children grow into adults who can see past their pain. Parents need to help them develop resilience. Discomfort, rejection, and failure are a natural part of life, is what we understood from this conversation. Resilience, like some of the other neurocognitive characteristics, are a better indicator of our child finding a life of health, happiness, meaning, and success than IQ or grades, which we all the time focus on. Friends, some amount of short-term gain to enable long-term gain may be desired on the road to resilience. We have to overcome pain most of the times. Pain absolutely becomes a teacher most of the times and helps you gain in the long run. If I'm correct on that, Leena.
Yeah. So short-term pain is okay.
Long-term gain.
Long-term gain is brilliant. Yes. And life's going to test us on various types of experiences, some which will make or break us. But, the truth is that the outcome of any experience relies on the individual, his thoughts, his values, his beliefs, and his stories. So this is why when faced with adversity, one person gets stuck and may crumble or give up or take his life. And another is able to move past their comfort zone and find traction to move forward. So all I tell parents, you cannot always be in control of what comes in the way of your children. But you can teach them to be always in control of the response.
Fantastic, Leena. So remember, friends, when you have resilience as a character strength, it helps your rise after setbacks and challenges. In fact, it gives you the ability to see past them and better handle the feelings that rise. Those who lack resilience dwell on problems, feel victimized, and look for distractions. And those who are resilient look to solutions and can take back their power from whatever person, experience, or event that pulls them down.
100%.
Friends, absolutely, Leena. And let's face the fact that everyone in life will at some point or the other face one or multiple challenges in their journey to happiness, success, and finding purpose. Becoming resilient will not only help your children to go through difficult situations, but will empower them to improve their life. We have the power of parenting for greatness if we want. And what means is very important is how you can practice resilience, how you can be perfecting resilience. We can help you do that if you can download the journals that we have uploaded on moonshotconversations.com. We have uploaded 3 journals. We are uploading the 4th one today. You can download those journals, and as a family, if you can fill up those journals, that will help you understanding resilience apart from the other topics that we discussed in the past 3 sessions, and help you build a very resilient childhood for your children and also a resilient mindset for you to take on life as it comes to you. Over to you, Leena.
So unfortunately, if you've got a scarcity mindset, you won't download the journal because it's free. And what's free is not always valued. But if you've got an abundant mindset, you will go download our journal and you will see us next Sunday for our Moonshot Conversation. The episode next Sunday explores self-awareness and how to live your life deliberately, on purpose rather than on autopilot. So if you've ever thought about your values, your personality, your needs, your habits, your strengths, and your weaknesses, or even more so if you've not given it much thought, then the next episode is for you. So look forward to seeing you next Sunday for our next Moonshot Conversation on self-awareness.
Wow, Leena, I'm looking forward for that along with the audience. And every topic is a life changer. Self-awareness is definitely something that all of us are always looking forward to. After a resilient mindset, let's move towards self-awareness. And I look forward to seeing each one of you on the coming Sunday at 5 p.m. sharp on Facebook Live. Thank you so much. Have a lovely time. Thank you.
See you next Sunday.